Hi, everyone. My name is Anne Marie Baines, and I'm the founder of the Practice Space. So today we're going to be talking about how you can use storytelling to deal with your emotions. And right now, if you're like me, there's so many emotions going on in our heads. And stories are a really great way to articulate those emotions, illustrate them, and help you deal with them in the process. Being able to share our experiences through really specific moments and really specific stories can really heal, but also can be very entertaining at the same time. So we all know about stories. We see movies, we hear fairy tales, and every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And every good story also has a moral at the end and also has a central idea known as a theme that help you figure out what the story is all about. So when we start with stories, we start with a one-word theme. So think to yourself about a possible theme that can be useful. Got that? So maybe one theme might be something like loneliness, or maybe it's something like trees or nature, or maybe it's something like improvement, so a little bit more abstract. Basically, any one word, whether it's a concrete noun or an abstract noun, can be really helpful to getting those stories started. So I'm going to choose the theme of nature, I think, because I've been trying to go outside whenever I can. It's been a little rainy out there, but it's helpful to get some of the fresh air. So once we have our theme, we then think about how are we going to begin this story. And it's really great when stories really zero in on a very specific moment. So the more specific, the better. You can start a story with a very particular time or a place or something you heard, or maybe it was a moment like an action that you heard, or maybe it was something significant, or a question that came to mind. It can be your inner thoughts. So I'm giving you lots of ideas, but just to get you started. So maybe for me, my story would begin with the mud on my shoes. So I'm not used to running in the rain or out in nature, but it is often what is most useful. So I might start with thinking about the mud on my shoes. So once you have the beginning moment of your story, you want to provide as much detail. You don't want to describe your story. You want to go into the characters, your thoughts, your emotions. So the beginning of my story might be something like, uh, all right, so the air was incredibly crisp and everything was beautiful except for my shoes. My shoes were an absolute mess and they were sinking into the ground as I tried to sludge up the hill and tried to figure out why was this worth going up the hill. So once I reached the top, dot, dot, dot. So going into some kind of action can be helpful. That wasn't the best version. You guys can do better, but something like that. Once you establish a little bit of the setting and the theme, you then go into the middle of your story. And the middle of your story, you want to go into some of the action, maybe the dialogue, use your senses. What did you hear? What did it sound like? What were the struggles? What were some of the conflicts that you faced in that moment? So after I would reach the top of the hill in my story, I might go into, and it never felt like I was going to reach the top. And I thought to myself, well, I've been training for weeks and weeks for this marathon coming up, and now everything is canceled. And so why is it even worth trudging up this stupid hill if I don't even get to do a race in the process? And I thought, maybe I should just go home. It's cozier there, and maybe it's worth it just to kind of go home and not even try anymore. So now I've kind of stopped in the middle of the story in what's called this tension or conflict, that where you're unsure or something is unresolved. And I personally like it when stories don't necessarily come to a neat ending. Once you reach the end of your story, you might just go to a moral or a lesson or a takeaway, or you could talk about what the story says about you or what it reminds you to do or think about. And it doesn't have to be completely wrapped up in the end. So in my story, I might wrap up with, and I took a deep breath and I decided maybe I should turn around. maybe I'm not going to finish this hill today, but, you know, I'll be able to get out there tomorrow. And, you know, it just reminds me that not every hill is, you know, something that I can actually get over. Sometimes I need to be able to go home and rest and try again the other day. So in my end of my story, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, especially in this day and age. Things aren't perfect and they are messy and they're unresolved. And so in those moments, I like to stay as truthful as possible. So with my full story, I would, again, just to recap, I would start off with a theme. So mine was nature. Then you go from the theme to picking a specific moment that really describes something in detail and starts to set the scene. Then you go to the middle of the story and talk about some conflict, something that you're struggling with or wrestling with, and helps illustrate your emotions. And then finally come to an ending where you have a moral and a takeaway. So a little assignment for you guys. If you can figure out a theme that can be useful for you in these challenging times, make a list of 3 to 5 themes, write them on little slips of paper. Little index cards like this are good. And then have a friend or maybe just yourself just, you know, draw randomly from that deck of index cards and see what theme you come up with. And that's your story. You're going to have to just jump in and start telling those true moments. And when you tell stories, it's really important, I think, for them to be true. In these moments, being able to articulate what really is happening to you and what's authentic and what's really part of your life is such an important part of storytelling. And even if it feels weird and nerve-wracking at first, it's definitely worth it because we get to hear a little bit more about how you view the world and what you think about and what you're wrestling with. And that's all we can do right now. So go and tell those stories, write those 3 to 5 themes on index cards, draw them out, see what happens. All right, stay tuned, guys.